Tonight on PhillyCAM Voices, we have a segment produced by Shanayah Wyche, a fellow at the PhillyCAM Community Media Mentorship Program, along with an in studio interview with our guest, Philadelphia based filmmaker and artist Xenia Matthews. The Community Media Mentorship Program is a 6 month long program where participants receive training in media production and build a portfolio of journalistic video pieces produced for television. Good evening, and thanks for tuning in to PhillyCAM Voices. I'm your host, Connie Komm. On, on our last show, community journalist Shanayah Wyche did a segment highlighting the creative network and growth of the collective Art Album in the first edition of a four-part series, Community Building Creatives, Art Collectives. In the second entry, Shanayah will be sitting down with the organizers and curators of the Future Is Us Collective, an all-inclusive visual arts collective based in Philadelphia that provides free platforms for emerging artists to showcase their artworks while giving young Philadelphians a safe space to enjoy the arts. Through this conversation, we will get the chance to hear the mission of TFIU, how they seek to prioritize the growth of underrepresented artists, and their vision for a more inclusive creative art scene in Philadelphia.
Started in 2017 among an electric band of high schoolers, the Future Is Us Collective was born to support young creatives in their endeavors to find their artistic voice. When I became aware of one of the collective's art shows back in 2018, not only was I familiar with some of the young artists showcasing their work, but I was drawn into the collective's online presence. I was drawn into the Future Is Us even more when youth news program What's Poppin' did a piece on one of their shows. After some time of respecting the collective's craft, I finally got the chance to sit down with founder, collective organizer, and co-curator Layla Islam, and collective organizer and co-curator Issa Matisse. In our sit-down, we touched on accessible resources to small art groups, self-actualizing as an artist, and creating art in the now.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm super excited. My name is Layla Islam. I go by they, them pronouns. I am the founder, director, and co-curator for the Future Is Us Collective. And outside of the collective, I recently graduated from Moore College of Art and Design. And in that undergrad experience, I was studying curatorial studies. And really my aspiration is to be a curator, like full time. I'm super grateful actually to be working under a more established collective called Amber Art and Design, and they are a public arts coalition. They've done a lot of murals in Philly within the past decade, and I'm working with them as their studio manager. And I recently took on the position as an intern for a conceptual fade gallery. And I'm working under curator Tiona Nekia McLeodin, which I'm super excited about. So yeah, those are my many hats and responsibilities and all that.
My name is Issa Matisse. I go by they, them pronouns as well. Within the collective, I am co-curator and co-organizer alongside Layla. Outside of the collective, I am a photographer, or I'd say like I'm a general artist, but my main focus right now is photography. Yeah, that's me.
I started like showcasing at pop-ups that were really local when I was like 16. And these were mainly spaces that were clearly for like more established, like older artists. I'm trying to remember the names of the spaces that I was in, but They were pretty cool, but I think the main thing I was just noticing was that they clearly were spaces for like an older demographic. Even like the ticket prices, like I was like, it'd be cool if my friends could come and support, but it's like a $30 entry. So I was like just thinking like what would it be like if there was a space that, because there was also like I had so many friends that were doing really dope art. So I was just thinking like what would it be like if we were to have our own pop-up that was specifically for young artists. I was also thinking of how there's like rarely any spaces for especially teens at that time, because I was a teenager doing this. Like there wasn't that many spaces for us at that time to be and convening with each other for free or for a really really cheap rate or whatever, that was like, you know, I guess safe to be in. Like, so I guess I just really wanted to find like this middle area that would like be this cool space where artists could share their work to like their friends and their family, but then also like people could just come in and like chill in the evening and have something fun to do that wasn't like not safe and that was like comfy to be in and stuff. And so I hosted the first pop-up and Issa was a part of it and we were super like we were babies. Um and that was the first pop-up show. And then people was telling me afterwards, like, yo, you gotta do one like every month. And I was like, I don't know about all that, but I'll try to do it more often. And I think when in conversation, like through prep of the first show, someone just like really like shouted out in excitement, like, yo, the future is us or whatever. And that's where the name came about. And like we kind of started with that like routine of doing, I think we probably did a show every season, like probably 4 times a year at that point. But yeah, it's been like developing and changing ever since.
We were definitely like just a bunch of like little young kids trying to like create a space. And I think we definitely successfully did that and we had a good time and it didn't feel like there weren't a lot of pressures to like be like fully established or know what you wanted to do. It was kind of just like come as you are essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good point because it really like I didn't even know what a curator was. Like I was just doing it, and I feel like we were all just like doing it, which was
Yeah, I feel like for a lot of us, it was definitely our introduction into the art world, especially in Philly, um, which seems really small when you don't know a lot of artists.
there's been a good amount of times too where it's people's first time showcasing. We're like supporting them, figuring out how to get prints, or it's people's first times performing and all of that. So like,
Yeah, even like my first time ever, I didn't even know that I wanted to be an artist until I decided to showcase in our first showcase. And that night, I learned how to sell work. I learned how to like talk about my work, which was weird. We also had like some first time performers at one of our shows in the Germantown space. Um, so yeah.
yeah, yo, and there's also, damn, I had something I was gonna say. Um, with that too, like I was fortunate enough to like go through art school, but I'm very like animate about being anti-art school. And I think like those experiences also support folks that want to be a creative without necessarily wanting the institutional support or being a part of an institution. Like, and I think that's a big pivotal part too. Like you get that skill set and that knowledge, especially if you're looking for it, through like the experiences that we create, I think.
I think in Philadelphia, especially, I feel like we're kind of doing a good job at this, especially like within schools with certain programs. But just making art more accessible and releasing the pressure of like becoming an established like artist, especially when you're like a kid, like in your teen years, like trying to figure things out. I think there just need to be like more spaces for kids that are figuring it out, especially kids that don't have the means to go to art school. Um, but I think there are a lot of programs like CMAC, for example, that I participated in high school that gave access to kids for to like learn how to be an artist in like a lot of ways. Like they have a photography program, they had a videography program, dancing and all kinds of stuff. But Yeah.
I was just thinking about this today, just thinking about my grief with my relationship with spaces as an organizer. Like, I just feel like there needs to be more free spaces for us to just do what we want to do, like, period. Especially young people, like, and I think this is something that kind of worsened post pandemic because venue spaces and stuff just don't have the funds to let people kind of just be more on the like I guess I don't want to say cheap, but they're basically a lot less flexible with working with small organizations, which is really frustrating. And so I feel like we just need more spaces, more like access to spaces. Like our vision is to really support creatives that are in the process of like figuring themselves out and like self actualizing. Like especially with the showcases that we have, like I really, and I think we both really just envision it where um the spaces that we're in are like all mutually supported between the artists, where we're like all being inspired by each other's work. We're all like not um I guess seeing our work as like this definitive portfolio or whatever have you. Like we're very in the process, which I think also leads to how temporal like our shows are and all of that. Like it's very much for the now, and to really just like organically share these works that are like happening now, if that makes sense. But I also think I'm really, when it comes to the shows specifically, like I personally, especially as I've been studying like uh what curatorship is, like I think the space itself is like lends itself as an artwork where engaging with each other in these like safe spaces, like having these joyous moments with each other as like young Black and brown people, as like young queer people, as young creatives is from Philly is like super super important and super healing for folks. So for me that's a big part of the vision too, like the fact that even just the space alone that's being held together is like an artwork in itself, basically. And I'll just lastly say too, like we also, especially in these most recent couple of years, like post pandemic, are really, really focused on, I guess, like involving a futurist element to our programming specifically, but also like our collective vision. And I personally like do that through like I mentioned, the programming that we host and the workshops and events that we host, where they are very like inspired by Afrofuturist philosophers and thinkers like Sun Ra, but also too just like thinking of using, I guess, those inspirations and taking those inspirations and like trying to create and facilitate like healing workshops, healing like programming, which is what I think we really aim to do with the Futures S group residency that we host. I developed like and did a pilot project run of the residency when I was finishing my school for my thesis. And what I really like wanted to get out of it, and what I want to get out of this iteration, is to create these like spaces where people can like share knowledge together. And I love the term that you mentioned of education, because I feel like honestly, I prefer the term like sharing knowledge between each other, because it for me it like more accurately reflects how non-hierarchical the engagement is. Um, but in general, I wanted to create these spaces where we're like sharing knowledge, creating art together, and engaging in like these different series of healing practices, so that folks can like develop this foundational skill set of how to effectively care for those around them, how they can more effectively care for themselves and be more present in their bodies, and also so that how they can be more present within their community. So like I see this as like a foundational kind of like knowledge that you can use and incorporate in liberation movements. I don't necessarily think that like the residency project and like the experience will like just fully liberate people, but I do think that these like experiences that we will have like in these workshops and these open discussions will be like transformative for folks and healing for folks, where we are essentially like embodying these practices and switching our modes of survival from like individualist one to like a collective resilience kind of mode of survival. And so that's my real goal. I'm super excited. We start the project officially in October, and we have an inquiry meeting next Wednesday. But it should be really dope, and we're doing it where a lot of the programming will be more in person this time, whereas like last time we did it, it was a lot more virtual. So I think it'll be really dope.
Future is Us not only would like for artists to practice comfortability, coming into one's creativity, but they also seek to provide material needs to our communities and youth. Just this past summer, the Future hosted their third annual Back to School drive.
Right now, I see us really kind of being more rooted in West, just because, like I keep mentioning it, but the residency project will be doing a lot of work with the Paul Robeson House, which I'm really excited to do. And they also just have been real mad dope supporters for us in the past year. So I'm excited to like continue that partnership and kind of be based there.
We have our next pop-up, which is like our anniversary show, which I'm really excited for because I'm like personally curating this, which is really exciting. Yeah, we're gonna have an opening reception from 7 to 10 p.m. on September 23rd at Thinker Maker Society in Old City. And we're also gonna have a closing reception and artist talk on the 2nd of October from 2 to 4.
Make sure to follow The Future is Us on Instagram and subscribe to their newsletter. All information about their anniversary and their residency can be found in their link tree. You'll also find a list of the Future is Us family, friends, and supporters here. I'm Shanayah, signing off on another PhillyCAM Voices.
Black Star's Philadelphia Filmmaker Lab is a year-long fellowship that will support 4 projects by Black, Brown, and Indigenous filmmakers through making equipment, space, crew, mentorship, funding, and critical feedback available over the course of a 12-month program. Black Star will act as an executive producer on the short films created during the lab and premiere the films at the Black Star Film Festival in 2023. The program is open to emerging and mid-career filmmakers seeking to create short narrative, experimental, or hybrid projects in any genre. The application for the 2023 Philadelphia Filmmaker Lab can be accessed via the Black Star website, blackstarfest.org, from September 7th to September 29th, 2022. Our in-studio guest tonight is Xenia Matthews, who is one of the inaugural fellows in Black Star's Philadelphia Filmmaker Lab. Interviewing her is PhillyCAM's own community news producer, Bettina Escauriza. Bettina?
Thank you so much, Connie. Hi, everyone. I am Bettina Escauriza, PhillyCAM's community news producer, and joining me is Xenia Matthews. Xenia is an innovative film and visual artist who creates highly saturated hybrid films that stimulate the senses. Her work focuses on her personal experiences of Black womanhood, the joys, the struggles, the misunderstood, externalizing what is often only experienced internally. Her previous film, A Few Things I'm Beginning to Understand, just completed its festival run screening at Indie Memphis, Slamdance, the National Film Festival for Talented Youth, and many others. It is currently streaming on Metrograph's website. Xenia has just completed a new short, sci-fi and surreal, Eureka, which premiered at the 2022 Black Star Film Festival as part of their inaugural Philadelphia Filmmaker Lab. In the future, Xenia seeks to install her films, using physical space to enhance the immersive experience. Thank you so much for joining us, Xenia.
It's my pleasure.
All right, so I wanted to hear a little bit about your experience with the Black Star Film Festival, but mostly to lead up to learning about Eureka, the film, right? So I guess it's not so much about the lab, but the process, that year-long process that ended up in the culmination of this film.
Right. So my friend Shatara, she sent me the information about it and she was like, apply. Don't think about if you're going to get it or not, just like apply. And I started like developing this idea like that I had from school because I graduated last year, 2021. And I started developing this idea that I had from school specifically for this application. And it sort of made me think about all the things that I had that had just been like swimming around in my brain for however long. Um, and yeah, I didn't submit like any type of script to the application. I submitted, I think, a really, really good lookbook that like made them feel like, oh, she knows what she's doing. But it was a great time. It was honestly probably one of the best like film labs slash assistance programs probably in the country.
So what is Eureka about? What was this idea that was percolating in your mind?
So Eureka is sort of this science fiction, speculative fiction, reanimation story. Think like Frankenstein, like bringing something back to life about this girl that I discovered via painting in an art history class. And her story was just like so sad, so unique, like a little bit weird. And there was also that like she died very young, like 16 years old of mysterious causes, which couldn't have been that mysterious. Um, and I just like wanted to see what her journey like from this space of death, like a purgatory space, um, from a space of death back to a space of life, and like who would facilitate that and like all those types of things. So that's where like my scientist characters came from. Like I wanted to see like if she re-entered into a space of loving care, like who would be like who would she come back to, who would facilitate that sort of birth slash rebirth.
Yeah, it's a really powerful story. I was at the premiere. It was a nearly sold out event.
Yes, it was.
And it was really wonderful. I found it interesting, this thing that you're describing about, seems like the kernel, the seed, the beginning of this idea that there's a lot of pain in there, and that you found that your instinct was to turn that into life, into rebirth, into opportunity, right? And that's really powerful. That's a very powerful thing about the art that you're making. So we're actually moving really fast with the time here, and I want to talk about some other pieces. So maybe let's go to this the previous film that you made, A Few Things I'm Beginning to Understand. So this film is surf the glittering channels of Xenia's mind in this highly saturated musical spectacular where she and an old friend, Pearl, begin making sense of the issues between Xenia and her boyfriend, Kiki. Talk to me a little bit about this project.
So this was my senior thesis. I made it I started it like summer 2020 when we couldn't go out and film like we usually do. So we were encouraged to like make stories that were close to us. And I was living with my boyfriend at the time, and I had noticed sort of this like schism like happening between us. Maybe we were like around each other a little bit too much, I don't know. But I sort of like delve into like what made us strong as a unit, but also like what was sort of like chipping away at us as two people in a relationship. And I sort of wanted to explore the effect of like anti-blackness, like me experiencing anti-blackness as a feminine person and him as a masculine person, and what that looks like and how that affects both of us, and separately but also together. So it's a lot of stuff. It's sort of like this experimental, like hybrid form film with a lot of different visuals and segments.
Yeah, it seems like you really thrive within experimental forms, right? That you're finding shape in that.
Yeah.
That you're carving something out of this I don't want to call it an abyss, but this swirl maybe, right? It's like
a cloud.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely. So how do you find the subject matter for your art? I'm curious if you have maybe a particular ritual that or a particular process that you engage in.
So I always start conceptually before anything. I like think of concepts and or themes that I want to like deal with within my work, and the visuals come after that, and like the story is like the very last thing to come. Like I never start story first. Like I'm always thinking conceptually and visually, sometimes at the same time, but if it's not at the same time, then it's concepts before visuals. And that's like the way I think. Like, but before I was a filmmaker, I was like an illustrator, drawing and painting and stuff like that. So I I just think, I don't know, conceptually. And the concepts that I want to explore are usually like very personal to my life because those are the things that I know. And yeah.
Yeah. The work feels like universal and intimate at the same time. It does really feel like I'm looking into your mind, which is it's amazing. It's interesting in that way. Talk to me a little bit about this notion of art versus content, and then the commodification of art, especially in relationship to filmmaking. What are your thoughts around that?
So I feel like film itself is a very like industrialized medium, which always has me like kind of conflicted, like what am I doing for money and what am I doing for myself? And I typically like to keep my practice separate from anything that I get paid for. It's just like something in my head that I use to ground myself. Like, why am I making art? If there was no paycheck at the end, would I still be making this? And just things like that, just to keep my work personal and authentic. And I don't know, so just sort of like untainted of the whole like mass production of like with social media and now like streaming services. Just there's so much happening all the time, and I just want to like mentally separate myself from that, so um just so that I can take my time, because taking your time is not very like like it's looked down upon. Like we want to keep producing things like faster, faster, faster. So I want to take my time. I want everything to marinate. I want everything to be like good at the end. So I just try to separate those things.
Excellent, Xenia. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been wonderful to talk about your work, and I'm really looking forward to the installations that are coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Xenia and Bettina, and thank you for tuning into this episode. Look out in the coming months for stories from the community from the Community Reporting Fellows. You can also watch our show on YouTube and Roku and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We'll see you next time.